For the biggest stories that made the headlines recently, I am Mark Otabo. President Tinubu calls for increased investments in food security, solid minerals, others during visit to France. Also, Senate passes tax reform bills for second reading. And later on the show, Port Harcourt Refinery commences crude oil processing. All the details in a moment. Stay with us. Earlier this week, President Bola Tinubu urged international investors, particularly from France, to explore Nigeria's untapped opportunities in food security, solid minerals, energy, and education. Tinubu made this call during a visit to France, where he met with President Emmanuel Macron at the LSE. Tinubu emphasized Nigeria's agricultural potential and invited French businesses to join initiatives aimed at bolstering food security. Tinubu added that the government is working to ensure stability and economic growth for foreign direct investment. The president also tied education reforms to national development, urging French collaboration to enhance skills training for Nigeria's youth. On regional security, Tinubu called for collective action against terrorism, highlighting the importance of Nigeria-France cooperation in addressing migration challenges in bolstering peace across West Africa. And of course, joining us to discuss this is Olufemi Lawson, Executive Director, Center for Public Accountability. Good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming. And of course, from our Abuja studio, we have Ibrahim Garba, a communications consultant. Ibrahim Garba, good to have you this evening on the show as well.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Fantastic. Let's quickly delve into the issues. Now, the president's recent visit to France is yet another drive to push for direct foreign investments, especially in areas of agriculture and solid minerals. How welcoming is this from your perspective? Ibrahim Garba, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I listened to you. Okay, beyond the visit, I can see some of the, areas which I believe that Nigerians can begin to see hope from. It's not the first time we're, re-establishing contact with France and other countries across the world. It's just barely 18 months in office, so we see it as an opportunity to, reintegrate and at the same time seek for new friends and new ways to boost our economy. And so, to me, the visit is timely and it's aimed at boosting our FDI and at the same time, see various ways we can, improve on our economy. So I think it's a time for us to, take a step further. And for what Mr. President is doing, I see so many positive signs for our economic growth. So I think it's a very good idea.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Olufemi Lawson, quickly, now, from your assessment, what collaborative efforts on the part of governance do you think should suffice to ensure that this push becomes successful? Because there are arguments that the president is pushing for foreign direct investments, and it doesn't look like the body language of the governors at home are looking like they really want this to really happen.
Oh, they need to key into the commitment of Mr. President. If you look at the last couple of months, unlike in the past where whenever the president of this country is out of the country, either on air treatment, fever, malaria, whatever. Now, in the last couple of months, President Tinubu has consistently been out of the country, driving from BRICS to G20, and all sort of engagement to drive the Nigerian economy to a greater opportunity. I think because when these investments are now being driven into Nigeria, they're not going to be concentrated in the federal capital or federal government investors, as the case may be. Yeah. Now our governors must begin to key into the agenda of the president in ensuring that their states are made available, opportunities are open in the area of infrastructure, security, all other necessary requirements that will attract investors. Virtually all the states in Nigeria have the potential for one economic activity or the other. Okay. So what President Tinubu is doing is not to bring so much money to the central, bring economic prosperity to Abuja, but rather to Nigeria. So I think the states should begin to key into this drive by the president and ensure that they create avenues that will attract investors as may be invited or as may be gained through these drives by Mr. President. So the governors have a role to play in ensuring that this is a success.
All right. Let's move on to our next story. Now, the Senate is set to reform Nigeria's taxation infrastructure. During the week, it passed for the second reading the tax reform bills forwarded to it by President Bola Tinubu in October 2024. The passage followed a debate among the lawmakers. The bill was thereafter referred to the Committee on Finance, which was asked to revert in not more than 6 weeks. The 4 tax bills sent to the National Assembly include the Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, which is expected to provide a fiscal framework for taxation in the country, and the Tax Administration Bill, which will provide a legal framework for all taxes in the country and reduce disputes. Others are the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, which will repeal the Federal Inland Revenue Service Act and establish the Nigeria Revenue Service, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill, which will create a tax tribunal and a tax ombudsman. Now, still with me here is Olufemi Lawson, of course. Ibrahim Garabas is standing by. Olufemi Lawson, very quickly. On Friday, the Deputy Senate President said the senators passed the tax reform bills to give room for contributions from experts and Nigerians. Now, if you were to advise the government on the issue, what would you be saying? Very simple. There should be further engagement of stakeholders. But if you have taken your time to read the tax bill being pushed to the National Assembly and the controversies around it, it's just about the inability of our state to be productive. I've read through the bill, and only one very important area is in contention: the derivatory principles of the value-added tax, which is going to be a revolution in the way that our VAT has been shared all over the years in this country. The real opposition to the bill are not people who are opposed to the principle of creating a federal tax revenue agencies and National Revenue Service or whatever the case. Okay. The basic area of contention has been those who are opposed to the derivative principle of the new VAT to be introduced. People who sit back, states who are lazy to be productive, and feels free money should come from states that are productive, from states that are generating tax. That is where this controversy, the whole noise about this VAT, this tax bill is coming out from. So this is a challenge that should have been taken by states to get productive. So every well-meaning Nigerians, especially those who are actually interested in the prosperity of their states, should support this tax reform bill. It is a way to get our states empowered. It's a way to get our state productive. And anyone opposed to that clause is only unnecessarily being lazy and unproductive. All right. Now, Ibrahim Garba, very quickly, you heard what Mr. Olufemi just said now. He said, look, this is a revolution that might have to take place in our tax reform situations around the country, with having states sit up to now ensure that productivity is top on their list. But it appears Ndume is leading the call from the northern region, saying, look, this particular tax reform bill is going to impoverish the north the more. Things are not going to be the same way it is, that the president should remember that he got the majority of the votes in the north. It's becoming back and forth, and the debacle is really surmounting. How would you respond to this, and how would you say it's the whole situation? What would you say is really the crux of the matter, that some people are not approving of it?
Well, with due respect to Senator Ndume, if you look at it from the wider perspective, this is the time for us. We are beginning to see that thing we are talking about through federalism. A lot of times we talked about how we can manage and restructure the economy. And this has gone on to show you that some states, especially in the north, they are just waiting from, these handbags or whatever you call it from the center. Now, we have a lot of potentials in the north. What happened to the Ajaokuta steel rolling mill? What happened to some of these mineral resources which you have, embedded under the earth's surface in the north? And why is it that at this time we are calling for true federalism, for people to wake up from slumber? We have so many industries that are lying waste in the north. And that is why, what we continue to tell our people, especially in the north, is that it's time for you to become more active. We need to have regional banks, especially banks that are domiciled in the north. We need to have a national carrier coming from the north. We need to have industries coming from the where you have these things in the north, it becomes easier for you to balance. And the north, we have a lot of shelter belt. It's not about oil alone. It's not about Lagos. Forget Lagos. I tell you, we have potentials in the north that can rival any part of the world. We have human resources. So it's just mere sentiment. And I sympathize with the Deputy Senate President on this matter. He has come under attack because people fail to study the components, the contents of the new tax bill. It's not about taxing the poor. It's about, leveraging on the opportunities which we have so that the taxing system, you are taxing those above 100 million, 25%, and all that. So you are helping to, improve our revenue. So I think it's time for us to, tell ourselves the truth, especially in the north. What are the governors doing with the resources coming from the center? And what are those things they should do? It's time for us to, be innovative. It's time for us to be more creative and look at the potentials which you have in the north so that we can, balance and at the same time compete favorably well. So I think whoever is against this tax reform, I think it's an enemy of the north. It's time for us to look inwards and take advantage of these opportunities we have so that the north can evolve in better ways.
Okay, now that you have actually stated this, it appears your standpoint is very clear. The North needs to rise up and begin to see development from their angle. Now, there are indications that some influencers have been paid to push the narrative that this particular tax reform bill is a no-no. Now that you're saying this, what efforts do you think should go into the drive right now to alert the Northerners all over, if it's possible, to have this particular explanation broken down into translations for them to understand what is really coming to the North? Because the narrative out there is that the president is kicking against the development of the North with this particular tax reform bill. So what would you suggest should happen right now to span across the North for them to understand that what is actually coming is actually for the good of the northern region as well?
Look, Mark, we should put pressure on the governors to implement some of these national policies which we have. That is one. Then number two, there should be need for transparency. And the holy ground for me is after this subsidies removal, people want to see the immediate impact, not the long-term impact. So if people are beginning to see this impact, I believe it will trickle down. Now it's opportunity for Mr. President, and I like the steps he's taking so far. One, we are talking about minimum wage. But, the icing on the cake to me is this local government autonomy, which will empower government at the local level. So if the subnational, especially at the local level, complement the effort of the center, all these things we are talking about will be a thing of the past, because it's about time for you to look for ways you can invest your money and bring in technocrats and bring in people with creative ideas, to revamp the North. There are so many talents. There are so many talents in the North, and there are so many areas we need to explore. So I think let us not put pressure on Mr. President. He means well for this country. But Buhari came, served, and he left. Now we're seeing somebody who is very desperate to fix this nation. And the only way we can succeed is not by whipping up sentiments about supporting him, so that these reforms we are carrying out, let them take time to study it, break them down into simple languages people can understand. So government should invest more in communication, and at the same time using people that will influence these projects so that it can bet very well at all levels of governance. So I think, to me, we should talk to, especially members of the National Assembly from the North, not to whip up unnecessary sentiment. We don't have that time now. They should put pressure on the governors to make sure they implement this to the letter.
All right, thank you very much. Well, that's about it on Newsweek this evening. We sincerely apologize for actually starting behind schedule. And of course, I've got Olufemi Lawson here doing the best he can to ensure that we have a good show. Thank you very much. And of course, Ibrahim Gadba, we really appreciate your presence as well. Well, have a good evening, and of course, see you next time.